Hi, my name is Karen Welton. In March of 2020, my husband Jonathan and I separated for the second time. It was right when COVID hit and things were really chaotic and stressful. We had a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and we had already separated a year before that. After he crashed his life, his board kicked him out, his ministry failed, his church kicked him out. We separated then. It was a mess. And we got back together after a while, and I thought things were better. I thought things had changed and he had changed. And then come to find out, I started seeing a lot of the same patterns and behaviors that I had seen throughout our whole marriage. He had been diagnosed a narcissist by different psychologists. He had pursued lots of different healing avenues and tried EMDR and lots of different therapies. He'd spoken to experts in narcissism. He had behaviors that included things like manipulation and lying and essentially leading almost like other lives where he was having emotional affairs and even a physical affair 10 years before that. So lots of unfaithfulness, lots of deceptiveness, lots of controlling, manipulative behaviors, a lot of which I didn't really even understand until everything fell apart in 2018. And then we began to sort of pick the pieces of our life back together. We moved forward after a separation, and I thought things were getting better until 2020 when COVID hit, and it all fell apart again. The stress of everything during COVID, and as in my journey of healing and working with psychologists and understanding what was really going on in our marriage, what was really not normal that I thought was normal, and what this dysfunction was that I was dealing with in terms of the narcissism that I was encountering on a daily basis, and seeing this narcissistic cycle of abuse repeat itself, where we would be having weeks where we felt friendly and we were getting along and it was good or a happy marriage. And then there would be this tension building, and then things would get heated and we'd start arguing all the time. And then he would stonewall me and I would pull away because I was hurt and felt unsafe. And he felt controlled and offended. And so he would shut down emotionally. And then that would last for several days or weeks. And then he would start to open up again. And we would just repeat this cycle. And we did that. We lived disconnected during our 16-year marriage for most of our marriage, and went through these cycles of connection, arguing, disconnection, but it was never a true deep connection the way I had always desired. And as things got more intense and more unhealthy throughout the years, it came to this point in 2020 where I finally realized I don't think he's changing. He hasn't changed, and he's not going to change. And I can't build a life with someone who's going to tear it down and sabotage it, or who I can't trust, or who I can't feel safe with. I can't build a life with someone who's going to manipulate me and control me and that I can't believe. And so I made the decision to separate for what I believe was the final time in March of 2020. And I kicked him out, fully having no idea how I would support myself or my 3 daughters, and not knowing anything of what was to happen. We didn't talk for a while, but it was at that time that he joined the Bulletproof Husband and began to really work on himself. Now, I had no hope at this point, and my heart was so broken and so hurt and so cold toward him that I didn't even really want to talk to him at all. But I started seeing changes very quickly within a few weeks of him joining this program. And he began to come to me and take full ownership and responsibility for all of his behaviors and actions. And I would listen, but I wouldn't even really respond at first because I felt so hurt by him that I didn't even want to give him any of my vulnerability. And so he kept sharing, and he would share things that he realized, oh, I believe I would say that you were controlling me, but really I realized I've been the controlling one. Or I realized that all of this behavior was actually because of childhood trauma or something that I learned, in my past. And then I began to play it out. And he began to look at not just his behaviors in our marriage, but where they came from and how they developed into these negative patterns and belief systems. And he began to do emotional work to deal with even childhood trauma that he had repressed and not even thought about for years. And so, and every time he would come to me and share, I would feel my heart like opening up slowly and gradually. And then he would ask, like, what do you have anything you'd like to share back? And I began to start sharing how much it hurt and what the pain was that I walked through and how it felt on the receiving end of that. And in the past, he would have been so triggered by that, and we would have gotten into an argument and he would have stormed off. But he didn't do that. Instead, he listened and he began to affirm and empathize with how I felt and what I walked through. And through months and months of this, of him showing up and being authentic and real and not shutting down and closing his heart and running away, which I think he had been so used to doing. And I was so used to him doing it. I would literally just anticipate that, like, oh, okay, if I'm going to put up a boundary, if I'm going to get in an argument, if I'm going to speak my truth and be honest, he's going to run away and retreat. He can't handle it. And when I saw him showing up in truth and honesty and listening, I let it all out. I didn't hold back. And I was just like, it was this and this and this, because I had all this bitterness and rage and anger built up in me of not feeling heard, of trying to feel heard for 16, 18 years and not feeling heard. And so when I would let it all out, fully expecting him to run away, he stood there and he took it and he listened and he let it affect him. He let it cause emotion in him, and he took more ownership and responsibility. And he would say, thank you for sharing. I am going to do some more work on that. And if he felt triggered, he would take ownership of that and say, okay, I have some emotional work to do around this. I'm going to come back and let you know what I find out. And I would see that what would become an argument immediately disengage from escalating. And then I would see him show up in tenderness and care and love. And it was work. I could tell it wasn't easy for him, but every time he did it, it built trust in me. It built trust that he was actually doing what he said he was doing. And he was actually getting to the root of all of the behaviors that were on the surface. And so I would see him not triggered. I would see him show up and take 100% responsibility for his actions and his behavior. And over time, my heart warmed and opened to him as he gave me permission and space to share and open up with him. And I could tell he was actually becoming a safe place for me. He was actually seeing me in a way I'd never felt seen by him before. And so, long story short, Jonathan's work in the Bulletproof Husband radically changed our marriage. It gave us a level of connection and depth and trust that I've never experienced in my marriage with him in 18 years up until that point. And it saved our marriage almost single-handedly. And so I am completely indebted to the program, the Bulletproof Husband program, and for the men in it, because their work, their accountability, their tribe of men that work together, that hold men accountable. And what I saw in this was that he couldn't run away. Like all the other programs and things that he would do, he would eventually explain a way out of it. He would use the tools against me. He would, in his brilliance, because he's very smart, he would find ways to twist things and manipulate them so that he wouldn't have to take responsibility, or that he would take enough responsibility and then the rest, now I have to change. Now I have to do all these things. And he would hold it against me and use it as an excuse to continue the old behavior. But this time he couldn't, because men were holding him accountable every single day and every week. And he would show up, he would get triggered, he would do the emotional work, then he would come back as a more whole, healed person. So I began to see this transformation happen before my eyes after everything else didn't work. And it was incredible to witness, and it saved not only our marriage, but our family. Our 3 girls now have a mom and a dad who love each other, who are secure and happy. And I see him show up now as a strong, confident man who's supporting me. He supports me in my business. He supports our girls. He shows up and he is a rock star dad and gets them ready for school every morning and does chores around the house and is there for me emotionally at a level he's never been before. And I'm just so grateful for the work he's done and for the tribe of men that he has surrounded himself with and continues to surround himself with. Even after going through the program and doing all the steps, he continues to submit and hold himself accountable in this group of men and continue his journey toward growth, which means so much because we're all growing in this, and to see him continue to go for that. And he is now a coach in the program and one of their top coaches, and works with men all over the world to help them heal their marriages. And I could not be more proud. So thank you, Bulletproof Husband.